Ah, the joys of post-coital sleep. This is what allowed me to handcuff my wife's hand to our custom handcrafted ash headboard. She didn't wake up right away. She carefully opened her eyes and then screamed. Her scream woke up her lover, Bob Simmons, who quickly discovered that his wrist was also handcuffed. Bob's scream was a little more manly as he fell off the bed, twisting his arm and cutting his wrist. He climbed back onto the bed, the words he was about to say stuck in his throat. I imagine that when your lover's husband wakes up standing at the foot of the bed with a large caliber revolver pointed at you, he will do this. Did you guys sleep well? I asked. Oh my God, Jerry, it's not what it looks like. My wife sobbed. Well, let's figure out what it's like, I said. You lie in our marital bed, with his man's seed drying on your legs, trying to convince me that you are a faithful little wife? Don't do anything stupid, Bob wheezed. You don't need to go to jail because of this slut. His eyes were still glued to the .35 Magnum in my hands. This made sense since I was shaking a little with rage and sadness. And here is the man for whom you decided to leave me. If you were still my wife, I'd have to defend your honor, but since it doesn't look like that's going to matter anytime soon, I really don't care. It's interesting that he still thinks so highly of you, I replied. Barb ignored both of our comments. Jerry, please put the gun down and let's talk about this. This shitty head is not worth going to jail for, she pleaded. Wow, I think a rose has really blossomed in this relationship, huh? He calls you names, and you call him names. I thought you would treat him with more respect. After all, he is the one you thought was worth separating us for. I answered sadly. Jerry, we're not breaking up. I screwed up big time, but we can get through this. I'll fix everything, I promise, she sobbed. How are you going to do this? Are you going to go back in time and not have sex with him? Because this is the only way that I can have anything in common with you in the future. I loved you so much that my life would have been hell if that had happened. I don't want to go back to that place again, but if the alternative is living with a cheating slut, what options do I have? I asked. I put the revolver to my temple. Maybe it would be easiest to just pull the trigger like this. I would be done with the pain, and you would be free to have sex with whoever you want, and as much as you want. You might feel some guilt, but I'm sure eventually you would forget about me. Jerry, no! She screamed. Do it! He shouted. I slowly lowered the revolver. An idea struck me. I opened the revolver's cylinder and pressed the piston to fire 6 rounds. They fell to the floor and I bent down and picked one up. I heard a grunt as the asshole tried to break the headboard it was attached to and failed. What a loser. He calmed down when I picked up the lone cartridge. Barb's face showed horror. This is a .35 Magnum cartridge that weighs 125 grains. When a bullet leaves the barrel of this revolver, it travels at 1,500 feet per second. When it hits something hard, it flattens out and nearly triples the area it can damage. Even if you survive the blow, it will certainly create a wound that will cause you to bleed, I said, making sure to get their attention. I inserted the cartridge into the drum. Barb, you know how much I loved to gamble before we met. In fact, it almost killed us in our first few years together. I stopped for you. Don't get me wrong, I benefited from stopping. But I only had the strength to quit because I loved you so much, I said sadly. I leaned the revolver back a little and turned the drum. It was still spinning when I flicked my wrist and inserted the drum back into the revolver. Since I really don't know what to do, I'll let chance decide. The finger of fate, if you like, I said. I slowly pointed the gun at her lover. Since Bob is the guest of honor here, I feel like I should start with him. Would you like me to record something for your wife or daughters, Bob? I asked. It's going to be a very lonely place in that house at 726 Maple Lane if you end up eating that bullet, Bob. Your wife, Allison, and your twin daughters, Zoe and Chloe, will be devastated enough when they see the package my investigator sent them. I thought about sending some less pornographic photos, but decided that your girls need to know exactly what you've been up to late at the office. I've also taken the liberty of including photos of your other 2 sluts, just so she gets the full picture. I didn't think he would turn pale, But when I pointed the revolver at him, he turned even paler. I raised the hammer back. He closed his eyes. I pulled the trigger. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. I thought he was going to faint, but he came to his senses. Sure enough, the sheet around him began to turn yellow as he wet himself. You survived this round. Perhaps you will see your pretty daughters again. I answered calmly. I pointed the revolver at my wife. What about you, Barb? Are you ready to meet your maker? You went to church last Sunday. I assume you confessed your sins. If you die today without being able to confess, will you go to heaven or will you still go to hell? Unless things have changed, is adultery still considered a sin in your religion? I asked her. Yes, she whispered with her eyes closed. Sorry, what did you say? I asked her. Yes, Jer, adultery is a sin. It is a sin against your spouse, and it is a sin against God. I never admitted what I did. I'll go to hell if that bullet hits me, she said. Well, let's see if your God wants you to live, I replied, cocking the gun back. I pulled the trigger. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. She sobbed as I pointed the gun at my temple again. I was in such a dark place before you came into my life, Barb, I told her. The only time I felt any good was when I was on that winning streak. It was never about the money. It was all about the excitement. I remember thinking how kind and gentle you were as you cleaned my hands that night in the ER. Gino's thugs actually did something to me. I told myself that if I had a caring woman like you in my life, I wouldn't need to play. Did I ever tell you that it was the memory of your hands bandaging my wounds that made me stop? I paid Gino off that night and have never gambled again to this day. I know that life without you will turn into hell. You are my support. If this bullet hits me, my suffering will end. You can't hurt me anymore. I almost want this to happen, I told her quietly. She sobbed as I pulled the trigger of the revolver again. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. My wife screamed. Damn it! Bob swore. I pointed the revolver at my lover. Since these could very well be your last moments on Earth, Bob, please tell me why you prey on married women. I really don't understand this. Your wife is attractive and your daughters seem charming. Why? I asked. Please, boy, don't kill me, he begged. I shrugged and pulled the trigger back with my thumb. He suddenly burst into tears. It's all about the chase, about finding what turns them on and then playing them. Your wife was a little unhappy with you. In any married life, even a very good one, there are rough edges and mutual claims. All I had to do was emphasize a little how helpful and sexy she was, and she lusted after me. Regardless, this was to be the last time. As soon as I have sex with someone else's wife in her husband's bed, the game ends and I win, he sobbed. This guy seemed to have some problems. He looked rather pathetic lying on the dirty sheets. I should have taken a photo, but I didn't want any incriminating evidence. I heard him groan as he tried to break the headboard again. I looked into his eyes. I pulled the trigger. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. The asshole lost consciousness. I raised my revolver and pointed it at my wife. Well, it's either you or me. I'm a little sad that my lover dodged a bullet. I love you, Barb. I almost hope it's not you. Things would have been a lot cleaner if I had come home, found you two in bed, and then couldn't stand it and committed suicide. You would be alive. I wouldn't have to deal with murder. All this pain would be gone, and you'd be free to have sex with whoever the hell you want. I told her sadly. She tried to remain calm. At that moment, we were both hanging by a thread. Jerry, please stop this. You made your point. Bob passed out from fear, sitting in his own urine. You won. Put the gun down and we can convince Bob not to press any charges. You didn't do anything that couldn't be undone. I want to stay with you. But if you put down the gun, I promise to sign any divorce decree you present to me. If I can convince you to leave me, I will spend every day with you. Atonement for my sins. Please don't do this, Jer, she begged. Barb, I don't think anymore. When I found out what you were doing, I got so angry, and then I found out you did it in my bed, well, something died inside me. I think that right now, I am the finger of fate. Let's see if your time has come. I pulled the hammer back with my thumb. I pulled the trigger. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. Barb started bawling as I pointed the gun at my head. Looks like fate has decided. I love you, Barb. I'm sorry it came to this. I hope you find happiness, I said, slowly pulling the trigger. Jerry, please do not, she screamed, trying to break the headboard to which she was handcuffed. I'll leave or I'll stay and you can beat me out of sense. Please don't do this. Oh God, help, help, she screamed. It's better this way, Barb. I love you, I said sadly. I closed my eyes. I pulled the trigger. Snap! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. Perhaps I should explain. You can see that as a player, I'm pretty good with my fingers. Gino crippled my left hand, but my right was still pretty good. Card tricks, chip shuffling, and coin tossing all develop your dexterity. So getting a cartridge out of a revolver's cylinder isn't all that difficult, especially when your audience is focused on the barrel. Tilt of the revolver back to rotate the cylinder gave me enough cover to remove the cartridge from the revolver and place it in my palm. After that, it was all a game. Why? Because I wanted them to feel fear and pain, but I wasn't ready for the ordeal for these idiots. Let's return to our story. I laughed so hard seeing the look on my wife's face. What, slut? Did you really think I was going to jail because of you two? Ha! I almost choked from the surging laughter and tried to catch my breath. Still laughing, I bent down and picked up all 6 cartridges from the floor. This time, I loaded the revolver for real. There's no point in taking risks. I tossed the handcuff key to my wife. She was sobbing and seemed to be slightly choking. Fool Bob was coming to his senses. Barb was still sobbing and made no move to take the key. I noticed that Bob was concentrating on the key, but he was looking at me, wondering what to do. Take the key, you idiot. Take your clothes and get out of here, I told him. Consider this an object lesson, Bob. Right now, you are allowed to live, but if I hear anything from the cops about today, I will kill you and your family in the most painful way possible. Keeping your mouth shut will not only save you, but also your wife and children. I told him in the most serious tone. Would I actually do this? Hell no. But I hope Bob thought I was serious. Otherwise, I might have gone to jail for more than a few years. When all was said and done, Bob didn't say a word about what happened. Barb was devastated but signed the divorce papers without any complaints. It helped that it was a pretty fair deal in terms of money. The only thing I asked for was my grandmother's engagement ring and that she take back her maiden name. She moved to Grand Rapids and sends me birthday wishes on Facebook. It doesn't look like she goes on dates, but I don't look at her social media page. I wasn't kidding when I said I loved her. I still get angry sometimes about what she did to me. But I'm moving on. There are more good days than bad, and there are already several women with whom I am friends with benefits. Bob is divorced, and the last I know of him is that he lives in a shitty one-bedroom apartment, paying spousal and child support that has nearly broken him. I sent him one instant message before he blocked